Ned Sherman. I'm one of the co-founders of Digital Media Wire. I'm also a partner at Manat, Phelps and Phillips. And I've been your MC today and will be tomorrow and Wednesday as well. Tomorrow we'll be focusing on more conversations around blockchain games and NFTs. And on Wednesday, the focus will be on mobile games and esports. We'll also have a session about Hollywood and games on Wednesday as well. Let me invite everybody to introduce themselves. You know, we like to have a lively chat, and please go to the chat on the bottom nav and you can select from the drop down everyone so that everybody can see your posts, and let us know who's here, and feel free to post comments there throughout the conversation. When you have questions for our speakers today, please put them in the Q&A area just to the left of the chat on the bottom nav, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. As I said, I'm really excited for this next session. The title is More Than Art, the Future of NFTs in Games and Entertainment. And we are just thrilled to have our good friend, Josh Yagato, who is co-founder and COO of Jam City with us. Welcome, Josh. Thanks for doing this.
So glad to do this. Thanks for having us, Ned.
Absolutely. And our moderator is David Bloom, who's a senior contributor at Forbes. And David, really great having you here. Have a great show, you guys.
Thanks so much. I am delighted to be here with everybody. And again, you got a question, put it in Q&A, make it a question, not a statement. Statements are for the chat, but please use the statement. Put your LinkedIn in there so people can connect, like almost like we were in person handing out business cards to each other in the hallway after an event. Do that so we can connect as much as possible in this crazy universe that we are now in. I am with Josh Yagato of Jam City, who with another guy I've been talking to a lot in recent months, actually for quite a while, Chris DeWolf. I've talked to Chris since back when he was CEO of MySpace. And then Josh was the guy who did the deal for Fox that brought MySpace into Fox. And so after that, they all went and did a cool thing called Jam City, a mobile game focused or a mobile gaming focused company that has rolled up a bunch of other studios and does a lot of very interesting stuff. Josh, how you doing? A, and B, what's up with Jam City these days? You guys got your hands in a bunch of stuff. We'll get to the NFT in a minute, but it's kind of like a big picture. Let's contextualize your titles and everything you guys are doing.
Thanks so much, David. I always enjoy talking to you. You're a lot of fun to talk to. So I was super glad to do this. Gosh, where are we? We founded the company 10 years ago. We've had an amazing run. We've got more than 20 games now, including, I'd say, more than half of them associated with really big brands like Harry Potter and Disney and many others. Also, a lot of original titles. We're, I'd say, pretty critically well regarded. So we've won Best Mobile Game Awards from Apple and Google and others. Over 1 billion downloads, billions in lifetime revenue. We've made a good run at it. We've had a ton of fun. And the best thing about this industry is it just keeps changing. So we were here at the beginning when it was going from Facebook games to mobile games. And now we're seeing this evolution from straight mobile free to play to a lot of NFT driven projects. It's really, really an exciting time. And we're happy to be in the thick of it.
You are kind of OG at this point. To even invoke the words Facebook game feels like a blast from a far distant galaxy, though I guess I can't really say that. I'm going to be doing a panel in a couple of days about Hollywood IP and games, so we don't want to cause any problems with the lawyers and Ned, IP guy. But you guys got your hands in a lot of stuff. The big thing, though, that I find interesting that you guys are diving into that we're going to focus on today. I will leave some time at the end to questions. If you've got something earlier, I'll work it in, but throw it into Q&A again. Otherwise, I'll try and monitor chat some. But to start, you guys have your hands in a very interesting title that's sort of in a long launch period, but the initial part of that launch has begun. We have ignition, I guess I'll call it that, but we don't have a full launch. So talk about Champions.
Okay, so where to begin? So first I'll say, the success we've had as a company so far has been around creating beautiful, rich, mobile play-to-earn games. So many of these crypto projects brought to the market lately have been really talented, I think, crypto experts, and we have a lot of that. But at Jam City, we've been creating substantial evergreen titles for over a decade. You know, we have some of the best designers, engineers, artists, economists in the world. And so we're used to making projects that last for a very, very long time. I was going to say forever. I can't say forever, but for a very, very long time. So we're starting with a team that is extremely talented and knows how to operate and create successful games. We're adding this whole blockchain component. Our CTO, April Whitcomb, was part of one of the biggest blockchain games, or companies rather, I should say, in the world. Extremely talented. We're bringing together our social experience, our game making experience, our crypto experience to create, we think, one of the most exciting projects out there. It's called Champions Ascension. So it's an entirely new and fresh world. So this is not a licensed IP. You know, we've created hundreds of pages of lore, and this is from some of the most talented writers and designers in the world. And then we've actually produced, you know, the artwork, the champions. They're really deep and rich characters. They come from different houses and races and have different mixes of traits that will impact what they do and how they perform when they come into the game. So we dropped that first generation of champions a little over a month ago.
That was 10,000 champions, right?
Yeah, it was actually the glorious 7,622. So it's a
good round number. Appreciate that. That you remember that says you've been spending way too much time on this. But how did you come up with that number? Is that some like square of something or what?
So no, the way we did it is we had a very limited window of the sale. We did a 3-day sale specifically. You know, many of these go for months and months and months. They put them up for auction, and for us specifically, we said we're going to have a very tight window because we want to have people who are really excited about this project and who are really dedicated. So in that 3-day window, 7,622 were sold. And then because the lore is so important to this, there was a whole narrative created about how there was a great battle. And these are the glorious survivors that emerged and are going on to lead this world into the next age. And so it's one of the
Ragnarok hit. Right?
Yeah. Something like that. I mean, the best part about creating this game is there's real player agency in it. So we're creating this world with our community. It's the first project we've done where it's really ground up. There's player input and involvement every step of the way. And so instead of, you know, some focus group, players have a seat at the table. They're helping us create the narrative. They're helping us create the world. And that's why I think it's resonating so much with the audience. So that's actually the fun of it, is that it's so iterative, and so much of this is driven by our audience and our players.
Yeah, to me, those pieces, there's two pieces that are sort of interrelated. So one's the social component, and the other is the player contribution toward, it's not just user-generated content, it's user-generated content that is actually built into the game, which feels like a little unusual. I can't remember a game, particularly on the front end of the process, where they've got literal buy-in by acquiring a champion and then are creating content around that builds into the broader game. I don't think I can recall something quite like that in the past. What was the idea? That feels a little bold, I'll just say.
It's first of all, I think to a certain extent, it's more the nature of NFT related projects where I feel like there's these Discord communities you build up where there's a really passionate fan base, or at least there is in the case of our project, and people want to contribute. I think through the history of video games, you know, players have always had an opinion on where games could go, what could change, what could be different, what could be better. I think we're just trying to turn that on in terms of trying to take advantage of that. We don't see it as a risk. We see it as a huge opportunity. And you know, these these fans are not just people who like the IP, they're people that have true ownership, right? Like for the most part, they've actually purchased the NFT. They have real skin in the game. In this case, your consumers are real economic partners, and it feels that way. It feels like, it's not us against them. It's like we're linking arm in arm, trying to create one of the best.
You're all in this together, right? I mean, so their success with the thing that the asset that they've acquired is built on a community investment in a broader experience that you guys are shepherding, but they are contributing to. So that is interesting. But as you say, it's not necessarily in the DNA of gaming, but it's definitely in the DNA of this very short. The community of NFTs is relatively short-lived so far. It's only been in a big way a year and a half, and it goes back several years, but really at the accelerated level, a year and a half. Now, Colin Sebastian had a couple of questions. One I'll drop in now. He just asked your confidence about whether NFTs in general and NFT games will have mass market appeal, because mobile is all about mass market. And I ask in particular because we've seen a slowing by 95% of the sales of NFTs. Some of that is we've gotten past the crazy moment and we've gotten into a more steady state perhaps. But this is a chaotic time in the markets, chaotic time in blockchain and all that. What's your sense as you look at this of, is there a mass market here? Do you need a mass market for this to work?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good question. First, I'll admit that I think we're in early days of NFT-based games. And I think some people have compared it to the early days of .com, where, there are plenty of people who are saying, oh, this .com thing, this is a passing fad. It's going to
never going to work out. Right.
Yeah. And they were sort of right in the sense that, probably 90% of initial .com companies kind of did go away, but they were obviously completely wrong from the perspective of it's central to everything we do right now. And if you had invested in the right players then, you would have done very, very, very well. And so I think we're at sort of an early inflection point. I actually think the barriers to entry right now for players are extremely high, like creating, a wallet, figuring out how to do that, get currency into that wallet, connect it to the game, go through the minting process. It's not an intuitive process. And so many people,
put it mildly, yeah. I mean, that really is an issue. That's not mass appeal. That's when did you get your engineering degree almost, so.
Yeah, no, it's true. There's a very high barrier to entry. In spite of that, there's been, a lot of traction and a lot of interest. And I personally do agree that if we're not able to create games that attract a broader audience, we're going to miss a huge opportunity. So all the, revenue and, all these great games that have scaled so far have done it in spite of those obstacles. And so from my perspective, once we're able to lower those barriers to entry, I really think the sky's the limit. The idea that players can have ownership in the game, can contribute to the game, can own that NFT and feel like they don't just have an asset, they also have access to a game where they can use that, in our case, NFT to compete. They're also part of, a social community. They're also part of, you have the opportunity to stake and create, resources. There's just, we liken it to a theme park where you're buying the ticket with the NFT and you're part of something larger. So I guess the point is, I find it so personally interesting as a player that as a game creator, I think there's huge opportunity. And as a company, we're looking to really cut down those barriers to entry. So for our initial drop, you did need to have a wallet and you needed to be able to, plug into MetaMask and OpenSea and everything else to be able to trade them. When the game actually comes out, we're going to have custodial wallets. So people are going to be able to buy without downloading a separate wallet. We're going to enable people to trade on the platform. You're going to be able to, in terms of payment rails, use fiat in order to purchase the NFTs. There's going to be a lot of opportunities to transact much more easily, number one. And then number two, you're going to be able to play without even buying an NFT. This is sort of our
that's crucial. It seems like to me is that you can still play this thing. You can dip in and check it out without making the without buying a champion and building them up and doing all that, you'll have a chance to play and enjoy the game at some level, regardless, right?
Yes, the concept is that the champions that people have purchased, we call them the Eternals. They are the highest level, the highest tier fighters you can ever get. If you want to come into the game once we launch the game and get a free gladiator, you can do that. It's sort of like a commoner, and you can work your way up over time and with a lot of effort, and that's fine. That's great. We want to make this game as accessible as possible. It's buying these NFTs, these champions NFTs was basically a shortcut to become one of the greatest in the game from the very start. So everyone's going to be able to play it. Everyone's going to be able to enjoy it. You're not going to have to spend a lot to be able to get in and be a part of this movement.
Now that creates an interesting class system that I think it's going to work, but I'm sort of curious about talking through that, because in the past, obviously, and you're well aware of this given your OG status in the game space, the whole loot box thing, the idea that you could buy cool stuff that would leapfrog your player beyond your skill was strongly fought by many gamers, old school gamers. This is somewhat different than that, but I mean, how do you deal with those folks who feel like they're buying their way to the top? I mean, how does that play out? Or is it, that these are the folks that are invested in and they're given some extra value as a result of that? I mean, I'm sort of curious how you're going to deal with that, because that's definitely been a blowback across the industry with NFT based, blockchain based games, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, it's part of it. We want everyone to be able to come in and enjoy and have a good time with the game. But, we're going to have land sales. And if you buy a great piece of land, there's going to be utility to that land, and it's going to benefit you in the game. And because you've invested in that plot of land, for instance, or in the prior case, in that particular champion, you're going to have benefits to owning that champion. So, I think this is different than the type of properties you described, where there's a robust trading system. People are very excited to get different characters with different characteristics. And ultimately, for instance, all the families, like if you're a life essence, or if you're an arcane essence, or if you're a death essence, and I'm going into some detail here, each one
essential essence, yes,
against the others. And so you're going to be strategic about how you build up the different characteristics of your player. And some fighters will definitely be stronger than other fighters, but there's always a strategic element where, depending on who you're going up against, having different strengths and weaknesses and what decisions you make will impact how well you do.
Yeah. Okay. So there's still going to be a skill-based component of this regardless. Now, the social component, though, is something that you guys have been investing more and more in, at least where it's appropriate within your other titles, for a few years now. You've been trying to build that up. Talk a little bit about the power of the social component in something like this and how you all are leveraging that, where you think that can help take the game.
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, our roots are in social. You mentioned it at the beginning, but right. Chris, my co-founder and CEO of the company, he created MySpace. At Fox, I acquired it, and so we believe and understand social very, very deeply. And I'd say for the first generation of mobile games, frankly, mobile wasn't a huge component, but as time has gone on, it's become more and more core to what we do. But I think with these NFT games in particular, and with Champions in particular, there's going to be an opportunity to make social more core to the product than it's ever been before. And, that comes in the creation of the product that we've already talked about, that comes in trading. I mean, social is a huge part of trading. You're negotiating, you're figuring out what you want and what you don't want. In our Discord community, I mean, you have to be part of these conversations to believe it, David. But people, I'm a life Karkadon guy to the core. Well, I'm an arcane character, and I'm part of that house and I believe in it to the core. Like people get really into this. They're really excited about it. We're going to have a social core that's part of this where people can come in and interact and, you know, feel like they're part of a 3D world interacting. We just think, you know, it's going to be well beyond the fighting. You know, social goes all through this product, and it's really half the fun is interacting with others and both fighting against them and also coordinating with them and figuring out who your family and your essence is.
Now you mentioned land sales coming up. So A, timing on that, and B, what's the land sale going to be for? I mean, are we just building fighter arenas? Is this going to be like here you can pick up user created skins? I mean, like what is, I mean, do brands come in there and say, you know, get, I don't know, Marvel skins for your fighter? I'm just sort of curious what you all see as the opportunity for the land sale, other than that's a thing to do in this sort of all-inclusive approach that you guys are taking.
So, gosh, so let's start with a lore. So this is all based in this world of Messina. And so
Right.
Messina is,
Which, by the way, named after your lead engineer, lead creator?
the lead designer, Johnny de Messina, who
there may be a link, is all you're saying. I'm just throwing it out there. Yeah.
But anyway, it's a beautiful, rich world. It's in all of the lore, and so we've already actually dropped a map where you can see, you know, this is a fighting world, and so there's sort of like a gladiator style arena at the center of the world. But then there are basically different neighborhoods and different parts of the world around that where everyone fights. And in the different neighborhoods, you know, some are more residential, some are more commercial, there's different activities and games. There's all different parts of the world, and people are actually going to be able to buy their plot of land in the world. And then there's going to be actual utility for the plot of land. So this is going to evolve, but you know, the idea of being able to improve your fighting ability or your weapons or forging through the land is something we're talking about a lot. Being able to have, you know, social opportunities in the land, being in a particular area with, you know, other people, and this is a 3D immersive world, right? With other people that you admire or care about or want to work with. I think people will value that. So there's a mix of utility and social that I think is really going to come into the land sales, and people are going to be able to buy their land and enjoy it, and then also sell it if they decide that you know, they want to invest in a different part of the property.
So I want to meet the planning and zoning commissioner for Messina, but B, because I think that's a really interesting job, the virtual planning and zoning commissioner. But that being said, let's talk a little bit about the gameplay and how that interacts with that land. So you've got a fighting arena where Joe Barbarian takes on Jane Vandal or whatever, but I'm guessing the gameplay is more than just 1v1. There are other kinds of gameplay, and are there also going to be sort of RPG-like components where you can go out into the woods and beat up, I don't know, dragons or whatever? I mean, in terms of gameplay, what are the sort of levels of opportunity for interaction and competition?
Listen, it's going to evolve. One of the best parts of this is an evolving project. The first version of gameplay is going to be 1v1 fighting. How that evolves over time, you know, we're not talking about that publicly yet. But what I can say is, without a doubt, there's going to be an evolution, and there's going to be different forms of gameplay. It's not always going to be the same. But the first version is like a PvP battler. Okay,
just straight up like Mortal Kombat minus ripping the spine out, possibly.
By the way, we've some early game footage has already been leaked, and I'll just say the players are pretty excited about it. So we're
okay.
Again,
That's
this
good.
is it's a beautiful, and we've got some of the best designers in the world, by the way, who have also worked on some world-renowned fighter games. So we've got the right people creating a really exciting title.
I would only suggest that perhaps somebody who's got more more attention span or ability to multitask, go out on the web, find that, and post it in the chat. Speaking of posting in chat, don't forget to post your LinkedIn connection and what you're looking for, what you're doing. And in Q&A, we now have another question from one of our most common contributors, goes by the name of Anonymous Attendee, but asks what your current takes are on interoperability NFTs for Champion Ascension. And so you're going to have a coin, and that's going to be your own coin. It's not going to be, is it based on Ethereum, I guess? Or A, what's the coin do? B, interoperability. I presume they're asking, can we take it beyond MetaMask? Can we take it somewhere else? Can we do something with it outside of here? If we have a champion, can we run over to, I don't know, Marvel Avengers Unite or something? I guess it's the long-term metaverse question.
I want to be a little careful not going too deeply into the tech on this call. I think my engineering team would, who can speak to it better, will.
I'd say you wear a suit for a reason, Josh. Just stick to the
here's what I will say. Here's what I will say is that it's going to be an Ethereum compatible chain that uses proof of stake, and it's going to be compatible with Ethereum without the cost and the time delays of Ethereum. So we think we're getting the best of both worlds. We talk about a little bit in our white paper, so you can get a little more information there, but we're going to be sharing more and more over time about the tech behind it all.
Right. And it is worth noting that you all posted a white paper and some other material around that technical stuff Friday, Thursday, sometime last week, right?
Yeah, last week. Yeah, exactly. And we were able to share a lot, I think more than a lot of NFT game companies share about their projects. And so we're really happy to finally be able to put more of that information out there. Again, we know the player base was really excited about it, but you can't put everything in there. And so we've also, I mentioned the lore. Oh, by the way, I said the name was Johnny Damasceno. It's Johnny Casamessina. Forgive me for getting yeah, House of Messina. Got to get that right, Johnny.
House of Messina.
An amazing guy. House of Messina. Yeah. Exactly. Yes. Way to flex your Italian.
Now it's going to be Terra Messina because it's the land of Messina. So that's about the extent of my Italian. But so in terms of where this goes, this is a complicated time for the markets in general, for blockchain, which apparently is somehow linked inextricably to the markets and going up and down as the markets are going down and up. But it sounds like also you feel like this is a long-term play. What's your long-term vision on the opportunity in blockchain beyond Champions for your company, for Jam City, and for the game business in general? And how does that fit into, for instance, all this conversation about the metaverse? It's a very gushy conversation, but blockchain is perceived to be, with Web3, really essential to where things are going. So how does this fit into that bigger 10 years down the road vision? You guys are making games that have some legs on them. Typically, they're still being, your early games are still being played by the hyper casual fans. Your more recent games are still doing really well. How does this fit into that big picture, long-term vision of where the game industry is going?
So I think, personally, I think that two factors I mentioned previously, the player ownership and the player agency, which are facilitated by blockchain, by the NFTs that you're purchasing, the assets in the game that you're purchasing are truly owned by you. You can resell them, and that buying and selling and trading is a core part of the game. If my 12-year-old son, who invested the last 2 years of his life playing a lot of Fortnite and now no longer is, and if he could sell those assets, or A, might have spent more in the first place on those assets, and number two, I think he'd feel good about being able to let someone else enjoy them and sell them to someone else. I think that's a fundamental improvement in where games are going, and you can theoretically do it without blockchain, but blockchain makes it a lot easier. And then enabling people to really feel that ownership and really feel like they're participating in the creation of the game. I think these are all fundamental big step benefits to players that are going to make the future of blockchain games very, very bright.
Yeah.
And like in the same way that each generation of, new technologies, going from console games where you're, sitting in the basement, physically attached with wires to a big television, to mobile where you're running around with a small device, to blockchain now. I just think each step brings, they may feel like small steps in some way, but you put them all together and it's really reinventing the industry. And I think this is a really important time. I still think people are going to continue to play free-to-play games. Don't get me wrong. I love that part of our business, but if I can take the best of free-to-play games and combine that with what blockchain and NFTs bring to the table, I just think it opens up a huge new opportunity for all of us. I think it's a benefit to the consumer. I think it's a benefit to the game maker. I think it's a really exciting time.
So our friend Anonymous had asked about interoperability, but there's a separate sort of related question, which is cross-platform. You guys haven't really done any, that I recall, any PC-based games or even console games really in the past much, right? But down the road,
no console games, but the majority of our games were available both on desktop and mobile, although mobile ends up being the very large majority of our usage.
Okay, so I'm just curious because it seems to me, while we can do an amazing amount of stuff with our mobile, it's kind of a pain in the rear to like put in all your passwords and all that stuff, do all that stuff on a handheld device, particularly if you're old like me. But does a cross-platform play with Champions make sense? Is that something, again, long-term you guys think is in there, and taking this beyond this particular game into maybe a broader land or broader universe tied to Messina with other kinds of games? I mean, are those things that you're thinking about as, sort of the franchise that we expand from? I mean, I'm just curious where this goes from where you're at right now.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I'll say for the game, first of all, what we're creating is a media franchise, and although we're starting with the game, it's going to go in lots of different directions, or that's the intention anyway. The game is going to start as a web game. It's not going to be mobile first. It's going to be web first, and then the intention is it's going to go to mobile afterward. I'd say broadly, I think this is an opportunity to create an entertainment franchise that, who knows, can be a film or a TV show someday, could be a graphic novel someday. I just think, players are spending hundreds and hundreds of hours with the characters we've created, with the characters they're purchasing. They're going to be spending a lot of time in the game, and the same thing happens in our mobile games as well, in terms of players spending hundreds and hundreds of hours with these characters and physically in these immersive worlds. If you compare it to a franchise started as a television show or as a film where there's, a couple hours a year, or, at most, 20 or 30 hours if it's a TV series and you get one season, the time spent with these characters in these immersive worlds where you're making real decisions and developing real relationships with these characters. I think the franchises of the future are going to be created in video games specifically, and hopefully in NFT projects more broadly. I think there's a particularly big opportunity to create super fans with people who are bought into these franchises and become evangelists for this world. And I mentioned the lore we're creating. That's not by accident, because we think this can be really big and really deep and really rich.
Right.
And again, exists as a TV or a film or the written word. It can go into many, many different spaces, and we feel like this is just the beginning.
Yeah, one of the things that you mentioned to me on Friday when we talked about, we tried to do a little prep call, was staking. And staking is something that is sort of emerging. It's been here for a little while in the broader blockchain space. DAOs are out there to do staking. How does that manifest within a game? And what's the idea behind that? What's the the value add that you all hope to achieve by allowing staking, I guess, of your fighter. So talk about that.
Yeah, so the concept of staking is basically sort of most simply, just to sort of make sure we're all on the same page, is you own an asset, you own an NFT, and by basically, pledging or holding this asset in a particular environment, you're able to generate a resource from that asset. So basically, the asset becomes not just something static, but something that generates other resources from it. And so
you're like a bank. I mean, you're basically being a bank. You're the put some assets up, resources up, and people can draw against that on a loan basis and then pay it back with interest. Kind of. That's generally sort of it, right?
Yeah, I would. So by the way, there is something in terms of like renting other people's NFTs that is going to be a part of our project, a version of it. I'm using shorthand to describe it. That's different.
Yeah, right.
Kind of the borrowing.
It's going to be more complex. Trust me. I know it's going to be more complex.
What I'm describing now is more, think of your NFT almost like as a machine or a factory, and it's generating a resource. And by, let's say, and this is not the theme, but let's say you had your NFT and you put it into a state of meditation, or if you put it into a state of production and you kind of like a bond, put it there for a week, or you agree to put it there for a certain amount of time, it is going to then throw off that resource. I guess it's sort of like a bank in the sense that like you put your savings somewhere and it generates interest. So in that way, right. I guess it's sort of similar. And then that resource will be valuable to you either in the game or in your life. So that's kind of what staking is. There's a real tangible value to owning one of these NFTs and holding it for the long term, because that NFT will create resources for you in the future.
Yeah, I think that's really intriguing in terms of thinking about a game asset in a different way within this broader world. I wanted to circle back to, and by the way, folks, we've only got 6-7 minutes left. So if you have any last minute questions for Josh, please put them in Q&A and I'll work them in as quickly as I can before we have to adjourn. But Colin Sebastian had a second question, and it was a broader question about sort of the economics of the mobile game business, and saying that mobile gaming revenues in general across the industry have softened recently. Colin was asking, is it all about IDFA, the Apple decision to turn off the spigot on third-party data stuff? Is that impacting mobile gaming like it's impacting Facebook/Meta and the social media companies, or what's going on, do you think?
Yeah, no, great question. I'd say that in general, the trends for mobile gaming are up and to the right. And, if you look over the medium and long term, games are getting better and better. People are spending a lot of time on their mobile devices. Games are by far the most popular applications on mobile devices. So all of those trends are going to continue to be really strong. I'd say over the past, let's say 6-9 months in particular, and you mentioned IDFA, I think there's also a little bit of COVID unlock that people are experiencing right now. I think the mobile game industry, I think Sensor Tower put out a stat that the mobile game market from Q1 of 2021 to Q1 of 2022 actually declined slightly. I think this is a short-term slowdown. This is kind of a bump in the road as people are coming out of COVID. They're spending a little less time on their devices. There's a little more economic uncertainty. I'd say user acquisition has gotten a little bit more complex for some players who don't have the technology to continue to buy quite as efficiently because there's less information out there because of IDFA. So as a result, I think, I think there's been a little bit of a slowdown, but over the long run, I really don't think it's going to be a big factor.
Right. Long term, it's hard to see as more people around the world get mobile devices that are able to play sophisticated games. It's hard not to expect it to continue to rise. at a substantial level. I'm going to butcher this name, and I deeply apologize. It looks so simple on the page, but it is probably not simple for someone of my level of ability to speak. What I'm guessing is a Thai name. Siam asks, what led you to pivot from Web 2 to Web 3? Again, this is one of those questions that can baffle normal humans. But as CM points out, some C-suites saw the journey from C2 to C3, or to Web 2 to Web 3, as baffling as fish describing breathing on land. Web 3 has lots of potential, but it is a whole nother universe in general, and you are diving into a key part of that. So what triggered that bigger decision?
Gosh, so first I'll say, I think as executives, my co-founders and I have a long history of always wanting to be at the forefront of where entertainment and technology are going. So Chris and Aber in particular, who are our CEO and CTO, my co-founders at Jam City, they created basically, one of the biggest social media, which is basically Web 2, products in the world, the biggest social media product in the world, out of the madness that was Web 1. And so I think then we embraced mobile before other people did. I think now we're embracing NFTs before other people have. I think my point is that, we're certainly not perfect, but we have a long history of wanting to be at the forefront of where entertainment and gaming are going. We love that. It makes things fun. We love to see how things unfold. We have a long history of creating very successful companies at the transition of every one of these technologies. And so I think what you're describing might be true of some executives, but I'd say for us in particular, this is what we thrive on, and this is the type of environment we do best in. We love transition, we love change, we think opportunity comes out of it. And we happen to work here at Jam City with some of the best, I think, creative and technical talent in the world. Honestly, a lot of the excitement for this came from the ground up, teams and individuals who were willing to do anything to make it happen within Jam City. And we really supported it and embraced it. And now we're helping to lead through it, and we absolutely love it. We would be having less fun every day, and I think we'd be less successful if we weren't embracing where Web 2 and Web 3 are going.
That sounds great. We're going to wrap this up real quick. Josh, how can folks get a hold of you? A, and B, what is your favorite game of the moment?
Oh my gosh. These are all, it's like, first on the favorite game, it's like trying to ask me to pick a child. I love my
And we know there's one of those too, so don't even start. I'm just saying. So
no,
the day after Mother's Day.
The early builds of Champions are tons of fun, and it's at the early stages of developing a game when sky's the limit and you can really do anything, are amazing. I love a lot of our existing games. I play, Harry Potter, and Cookie Jam is a game that we created, 7 or 8 years ago. I still have fun with that game, Disney Emotionally Blitz. I know I'm just going through my games, and you're like, come on, Josh.
Just one. It's always fun on one, dude, because we haven't got much time left. How can I get a hold of you?
LinkedIn is a great way to reach out. I'd say email me. I'm always excited to talk to people. Here at Jam City, we're always growing. We're always looking for talented people. So if you're a talented leader of a game or someone with big ideas, we want to talk. So reach out to Jam City. We're here. We're based in LA, but we have studios all over the place, and we have plenty of employees who are not based in one of our 8 locations. So reach out to us if you want to talk.
Fantastic. This is David Bloom. I am a writer for TV Rev, Forbes, and Next TV. You can reach me on LinkedIn and on Twitter at David Bloom. I will turn it over now quite happily to Ned Sherman to take us out the door.
Thank you, David and Josh. Josh, we really appreciate you spending the time today, and always impressed with what you guys are doing at Jam City. So keep up the good work. We enjoy having you here at LA Games Conference. And David, great as always as a moderator. You're always entertaining. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Ned. Really a pleasure to be here. This was a lot of fun. And David, thank you so much. It was fun.